Shares can seem really complex, but actually they're very simple. Here's a 101 introduction to how shares work. If you own a stock, commonly called a share, it means that you own a share of a company. Companies are usually divided into tens of thousands of shares. But to make it simple, let's say there's a fictional company called Dony. Dony makes DVDs, CDs, TVs, computers and the like. Dony is also listed on the stock exchange and is divided into 10 shares. So, if you own one share, you own 1/10 or 10% of the company. And because you own 10% of the company, you're entitled to 10% of the profit that company pays out. Simple, right? If Dony pays out $100 of profit, you're entitled to 10% of that, $10. This is called a dividend. The easy way to remember that is that it's the money divided up at the end of the year. Dividend. Earning money on dividends is the first way that people earn money from their shares. If the money you make from dividends over the time you own the shares is more than you paid for the shares in the first place, then you've made money. So typically, if you want to earn money from dividends, you want to find a company where the amount you expect to be paid on dividends over the time you want to own the shares is more than the amount the shares cost. It's important to remember, though, that your dividend is a share of the profit that a company decides to pay out, not a share of all the profit a company makes. A lot of the time, companies take some of their profit and reinvest it into the company to help it grow. That money is not paid out to shareholders. So, if dividends are the first way that people make money from their shares, what's the second? Imagine that your one share of Dony is worth $100 when you buy it. But the company performs really well and after a year your shares are worth $200. If you sell your shares for $200, then you'll make a profit. Money made by buying your shares at one price and selling them at a profit is called a capital gain. That's because the money you use to buy your shares is referred to as capital. So, you gained on your initial capital. It's really not any more complicated than that. The things that make it hard are 1. Figuring out what a company and a share in that company is worth. We just made up that one share of Dony was worth $100, but how do you really figure out what a share is worth? Well, in theory, a share is the amount a company is worth divided by the numbers of shares there are. If Dony is worth $1,000 and it's divided into 10 shares, then each share is worth $100. But how do you figure out how much a company is worth? You have to take into account abstract things like potential and marketability and risk. Valuing companies is hard, and a lot of things affect company values. Imagine if you bought shares in a company and it turned out that the products they made were unsafe. Probably all your value would be lost. So in reality, the price of shares is actually determined by how much people buying shares are willing to pay for those shares, which is dependent on how much they think a company is worth, not simply by looking at a company's profit and loss statement and performing a simple calculation. That's also why the value of shares in a company can change every day, even though the tangible value of the company itself isn't really fluctuating that much. 2. Figuring out when to buy and sell. If you plan to make money on capital gains, you have to buy shares when value is low and sell after the value has increased. So not only do you need to be able to figure out what a good price to pay for a share is, you need to be confident that the value of the company, and hence the shares, will rise over time. As with all investments, the only way you can really start is to get a financial education. Talk to financial advisors and start to learn more about what is going on in various industries. The stock market is easy to understand at a basic level, but deep in terms of mastering it. So you